Okay, today is February 27th, 2022, and we'll make two presentations on two architects. The first one is Rudolf Steiner, who was not really an architect, but he built, and he built in interesting ways. So let's read a little bit about him. Rudolf Joseph Lorenz Steiner was born on the 27th of February or 25th, Wikipedia says, and died in 1925, was an Austrian philosopher, social reformer, architect, esotericist, and claimed clairvoyant. Steiner gained initial recognition at the end of the 19th century as a literary critic and published philosophical works, including the philosophy of freedom. At the beginning of the 20th century, he founded an esoteric spiritual movement, anthroposophy, with roots in German idealist philosophy and theosophy. Other influences include Goethean science and Rosicrucianism. In the first, more philosophically oriented phase of this movement, Steiner attempted to find a synthesis between science and spirituality. His philosophical work of these years, which he termed spiritual science, sought to apply the clarity of thinking characteristic of Western philosophy to spiritual questions. Differentiating this approach from what he considered to be vaguer approaches to mysticism. In a second phase, beginning around 1907, he began working collaboratively in a variety of artistic media, including drama, the movement arts, developing a new artistic form, eurythmy, and architecture, culminating in the building of the Goetheanum, a cultural center to house all the arts. This is the house where he was born, and the bicycle didn't belong to him, I think. This was him as a young man, and quite an interesting person and thinker and doer. Austrian, of course. I say of course because Austria is quite good at provocative cultural actions. Sometimes not only cultural, as we know. And but Rudolf Steiner, I think, if he thought of spiritual science, he probably also thought of what we might call a spiritual architecture. But a spiritual architecture which was to be built at a time of decreased spirituality. So this makes his work, I think, rather interesting. I presented his work a few years ago simultaneously with the works of Wittgenstein, also a philosopher who built. And maybe we need architects who are also philosophers, and philosophers who also try to do, meaning to build, although maybe we should abstain for a while from building. This is what he says about education, which is, I think, a thought that deserves attention. Our highest endeavor must be to develop free human beings who are able of themselves to impart purpose and direction to their lives. The need for imagination, a sense of truth, and a feeling of responsibility. These three forces are the very nerve of education. He was very, very interested in education. If we do not believe within ourselves this deeply rooted feeling that there is something higher than ourselves, we shall never find the strength to evolve into something higher. Another quotation from him. Now the Goetheanum. In fact, there were two Goetheanums built, one that was damaged by fire, and then a second one. We'll take a look first at the first Goetheanum, which was this one. And this is an architecture of a non-architect, but the non-architect, I think, had a vision which is not to be ignored. The first Goetheanum, a timber and concrete structure designed by Rudolf Steiner, was one of 17 buildings Steiner designed between 1908 and 1925. It was intended as a Gesamtkunstwerk, the synthesis of diverse artistic media and sensory effects infused with spiritual significance. This is the second one that he built, because the first one, as I said, was damaged by fire. But we are going to look more in detail at this building. This is another building from 1914, the building that contains the boiler for the hot water. So, an utilitarian building, but you'll see that the architectonic expression is not utilitarian at all. In his form follows function method, the building is dominated by the smokestack, while the two qualified towers in the front are reminiscent of boilers. Here it is. Now, who would do today such a building, for this function, a boiler for the hot water system? This is almost inconceivable by most architects and most schools of architecture. But this is because we don't think any longer in symbolic terms. We are pragmatic practitioners concerned only with logistics and cold-blooded rationalities. But we forget the symbolic function of a building, and even a boiler should not neglect what we call symbol. Yes, maybe there is a certain naivete, especially at the bottom, but it still has it's still a unique vision here, and I think the building still stands out. Well, maybe all too well because of its height and so on. I find it interesting, and again, I think we need the innocence of those who are not trained as architects, because those who are not trained by architects have sometimes, at least sometimes, a vision to which trained architects do not have access any longer. This kind of building, I think, adds to the mystery of the world instead of decreasing it, as most of us are very busy working on. I mean, even these, so-called details, the entrance door, the window above, they are crafted in a certain way. There is a certain character here. Now, maybe, the stair is a little bit questionable from a Neufertian point of view. It's okay, it's okay. But still, I think the building, despite its, maybe a certain appearance at the bottom of being a gingerbread house, what is happening at the top is not at all, gingerbread. So it's this mixture between audacity at the top and a certain, maybe naive domesticity at the bottom. But still, the building becomes a sculpture and is still striking. How many boiler rooms in the world are striking architecturally? I'm not sure there are many. I don't think there are many. Anyway, this is just one of those many buildings he built. And of course, the most important is the Goetheanum. And we are going to see it in detail. But even, even the rail, the handrail, the parapet of the stair it has character. It is designed with a maybe unique design. So he was a good designer. Now, another building from 1915, 1916, Let me see. It's this building here. I don't know its function because I don't know German, unfortunately. But in this case as well, the building has an increased level of domesticity or déjà vu at the bottom, but then the roof is telling a different story. The roof becomes both more organic and more abstract, and this is probably appropriate for many buildings because the roofing is the coiffure of the building, so to speak. Again, we are dealing with an architect who didn't receive training in architecture and who was actually a philosopher, a thinker, an educator, but he was not trained in practical arts, in applied arts. It's interesting, even the way he conceived these three steps here, turning them left and right in this way, and he tried to do something there. It wasn't just utilitarian three steps and that's it. Now, it's interesting that on the same day, there were two architects so very different born, although, yes, not the same year. The one I'm going to talk about next is very different from Steiner, and maybe it would be interesting to compare their works. Anyway, this is a model. And let's read here. This is another early plastic model for this building, designed 1921, 1922. It might be that architects who are not trained as architects have a more open mind towards symbolism and metaphor. It's possible because we see even here, it's the front elevation of the building is rather, imposing, and it has it's almost it has a certain mystery about it. There is a Gothic element also present, I would say. But when you talk about spirituality, it's almost inevitable to descend on the spiral of time before the Renaissance, when faith, collective faith, was undisputed and unquestioned and unquestionable. Now, this building or became, no, I think it was from the very beginning some kind of a hostel for people coming to this campus with buildings, dedicated to maybe the re-spiritualization of life. He had many followers and, people, well-to-do people who contributed with money and with work as volunteers. It was a spiritualist movement. And architecture, of course, was necessary, and it became the expression of their, philosophical and spiritual concerns and ideas. He also designed furniture. This presentation on him, I will end with some pieces of furniture he designed. Now, things like this you would expect today because of parametric design and so on. But at that time, you know, everything was done manually. And I don't know exactly how he worked, if he provided handmade drawings, you know, like accurate working drawings. I don't know. This is another building for the art workshop where the glass window or the first Goetheanum were built. So the glass windows of the first Goetheanum were built here in this building. Interesting. Now the transformer house on the left, the second Goetheanum on the right. This is the transformer house. You know, itself rather interesting. And here is the second Goetheanum, the largest building he built. So yes, another utilitarian structure, but it makes you stop and it makes you think. And it has also aesthetical concerns. And it is as you see it. As opposed to the boiler house where the chimney is, you know, in flames, so to speak. Here we are dealing with cubistic geometry. You know, it's the house of electricity in a way, and it has a different appearance, maybe appropriately so. Now the Goetheanum, the second Goetheanum in Dornach, that's where all these buildings are. This is a model with all of them. So everything you see in blue was built and designed by Rudolf Steiner. And you know, the central building and the most important one is of course the Goetheanum. Here it is, and the Goetheanum derives its name from Goethe. Goethe, who was, you know, the great poet who aspired towards synthesis between art and science, and he was quite good at many things, including scientific observation. If we consider his book, The Theory of Colors, a great European Goethe, indeed. Now there are, I don't know why I included this link here. If you want to notice it anyway. The truth is, this was a cultural personality of importance, and there are many materials on the web about him. Anthroposophic architecture, you know, because he was the founder of the anthroposophy. You know, I personally have some doubts about underlining anthropos these days, but it depends, because if you consider anthroposophy as a spiritual movement of man, of the human being, that very dimension, spirituality, I think erodes a little, at least a little, the arrogance of a human being who is only concerned with his supremacy on earth and doesn't recognize anything higher than himself on earth. This is the first Goetheanum. Very interesting building, actually, both the first one and the second one. Some, I think that they are rather dark buildings, you know, ideologically or philosophically or even spiritually. Yes, there is a certain level of so-called darkness because because of the Gothicism in a way. It was built with volunteers, you know, it was, oh yes, I have some pictures with, it was an adventure, you know, even building the building was an adventure. And I like this very much, you know, these people probably felt very accomplished in the act of erecting these buildings that were to express their philosophy, their ideology, their aspirations, their spirituality. So it was, in a way, an architecture that was a culmination of beliefs that were born from a certain system of thought. We don't do this sort of thing these days, you know. We just build buildings for some other people, but they don't express, you know, philosophical ideas. They are not imbued with more than just the function they need to serve. Perhaps to understand better the architecture, one has to know anthroposophy and read Rudolf Steiner. Ideally, it should be so, yes. Architecture as a synthesis of the arts. This was a book published with the lectures of Rudolf Steiner. Now, who is thinking today about architecture as a synthesis of the arts? Well, most people don't even believe any longer that architecture is an art. Forget about being the synthesis of the arts. But this man, you know, a philosopher, but also a doer and also an architect, thought otherwise. Here he worked with, you know, volunteers, women, most of them. Yes, it's beautiful that you know, something of that spirit that animated the collectivities before the Renaissance happened, you know, not too long ago in a way, you know, about 100 years ago or so. It's a monumental building. This second Goetheanum is impressive both outside and inside. So all these buildings were built by and designed by Rudolf Steiner. I mean, we just look at some pictures, but we can imagine very easily the effort that was made in order to create this building, to make it. You know, it's here is just a photograph, but the building was built. Who taught this man architecture? Nobody. Or you could say, maybe in a rather somehow naive way, God. It's possible, but there are many architects like this, and some of the best, actually. We are going to see also a little later some, well, they are considered artworks now. They actually, his diagrams and inscriptions on blackboards with colored chalk, which are very, very nice, actually, artistically speaking. They didn't have, you know, sophisticated technology, and yet they built it. Probably it is true what he said, you know, that education is about preparing people to be, you know, like free individuals with imagination, free thinking, and in a way, the building itself expresses this. But in the present, as you see, there are chromatic interventions. It is quite powerful and sculptural, as you can see. This building inside makes me think a little bit about some stage design for film that Hans Pelzig did, but also some works also by Hans Pelzig. So there is expressionism here. And expressionism is not very fashionable these days, but that's because most of the time we divorced architecture from any kind of spiritual aspiration. So, you know, we don't believe too much in exaltation. It's hard to believe that such a building was built essentially with volunteers. It's also very possible that many of the things they did here would have been in a more so-called organized society illegal from various points of view. But as Zvi Hecker said, a great building has to be illegal. We saw this one, the boiler room, the boiler house. Another building from the campus. Now, anthroposophical architecture, maybe it's worth exploring again. Let's read what Rudolf Steiner had to say, and let's see if at the end of Anthropocene, if we can imagine an anthroposophical architecture. Here it is, affected by fire, because wood, as we know, is very vulnerable to fire. Now, as I said, I will show also some furniture by Rudolf Steiner, and his furniture is like his buildings, like his architects. It's cultural, solid, massive even. Could we say that this man was not a talented designer? I don't think we can. He was talented. I mean, look at this desk. You know, it's remarkable in its sculpturalness. Of course, it's not to be mass produced. Of course, it is not inexpensive, but it is a one of a kind piece. Another one of a kind piece. This one interesting as well. He obviously liked design, obviously liked to build. He was not happy with just thinking. He also wanted to do. So this is anthroposophic furniture. Even a lamp, why not? Some artworks, we call them artworks, but they actually, as I said, they were, the result of him giving lectures and, drawing spontaneously with chalks on blackboards. He also did a few paintings, but those that I like the most are not his so-called artworks, but as I said, those notations on blackboards. He aspired to be a universal man in the Renaissance kind of way. doing everything, writing, painting, drawing, building, thinking, publishing books, and so on. In essence, a dreamer, but also a doer, not just a dreamer who lays on the sofa and dreams. No, he was also a doer. And we look at some of his things. This is, sorry about these words in Romanian, The Power of Thought pictures on Rudolf Steiner's blackboard. So they are probably well described here as thought pictures, because he visualized his thoughts with a color chalk on blackboards, and they were kept, and now they are part of important exhibitions. So there are books. There is a book published, Blackboard Drawings from 1919 to 1924, where, in this engaging form of graphic expression, he was, externalizing his thoughts, knowledge of higher worlds. And here they are. You see the blackboards. And we are going to look in detail at some of them. I like this mixture between words and pictures. And there is a tension, there is even a conflict, it's a vortex of notations showing his own quest, his own struggling with the subject. But what is interesting is that even if they are just, in a way, illustrations of his thought process, they are also aesthetically engaging and even pleasing, and they are provocative. And one might even say that they are beautiful. I personally like them very much. So this is not a dry thought. This is a, if I can say so, a wet thought. It's a burning thought. It's a thought which also manifests aesthetical virtues or attributes or qualities. Well, this is a book published in Romania, Artă și cunoașterea artei, Art and the Knowing of Art. Another blackboard artwork between quotation marks by Rudolf Steiner. A rich life. He earned his life. Most of us, we are concerned with earning a living, but he earned his life more than earning a living. Not that earning a living is easy, it's not. For most of us, it's not. But there is a higher form of earning, and that is earning one's life, not just earning a living. And unfortunately, many people, in the process of earning a living, they do not earn their lives. And I'm not saying it with arrogance, because I know myself how difficult it is to earn a living. But even more difficult, but more rewarding and more important, is to earn one's life. And that's what Rudolf Steiner tried to do in these various forms of living his life. Indeed, here, looking at these pictures, we can say what Michelangelo said, that pittura è una cosa mentale. It's a mental, and then the word concept kind of came from there. So it's not just, drawing pretty pictures. It's about thinking. But it's a thinking which also aesthetically is potent and rich, nourishing. You see here great tension between the word and the image. Somehow these blackboard visualizations make me think of the drawings of Frederick Kistler. It's a quest for knowledge, for knowing, and I think in the tension between knowing and doing, Rudolf Steiner found his way. Now the Steiner's gravestone at the Goetheanum, this is it. He probably designed it. Maybe, I don't know, or somebody else did, but it's, aesthetically connected with what we already saw in his buildings and furniture designs. Okay, and now we go to the second presentation, an architect who died just some years ago, and a very different architect from the one we looked at. There is a controversial, perhaps, part here. I struggled. I didn't know what to do, to keep it, not to keep it, but in the end, I kept it. I'm not sure I did well, but you'll understand why I had the dilemma. So Livio Vacchini, born in 1933 and died in 2007, so 15 years ago. Let's read a little bit about him. But before we look at a few pictures with him, Livio Vacchini, ideology and philosophy. Of course, any good architect has his or her own philosophy. It's not, you cannot just build without, although, as Wolf Prick said, when I asked him what do you recommend young architects or architects in general or students, he said, don't think. But, not thinking could mean thinking in a different way. Anyway, this is Livio Vacchini, a Swiss architect from Ticino. And so he was born on February 27th, and that's why we talk about him today. Livio Vacchini was a Swiss architect from Ticino. He was born in Locarno from 1953 to 1958. He studied architecture at Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. After a stay in Stockholm and Paris from 1959 to 1961, he established his own architecture studio in Locarno called Studio Vacchini Architetti. Working closely with Luigi Snozzi and Silvia Kmur, he worked with other architects. I have to say that this presentation that I made rather quickly is not, as some parts which are chronological and some parts which are not. I began with some works, later works, and then I changed my mind. I wasn't always at ease with creating this PowerPoint presentation, because the architect himself and his work are a little bit difficult for me, and I will try to explain why. The works of Livio Vacchini feature an extreme coherence of theme and practice. Maybe an answer to the question that I just formulated is right here, an extreme coherence. I'm a little bit uneasy with anything that is extremely coherent, because I think life has, as Boileau said, you need l'esprit de géométrie and l'esprit de finesse. And l'esprit de géométrie, the spirit of geometry, okay, could be correlated with the coherence, with the system. But then you have the spirit of fineness, of grace, the grace which problematizes this extreme coherence. I have a problem with this extreme coherence, but we'll look at the buildings and then we can talk if indeed they are so extremely coherent. Maybe they are, but this is another way to put to say that they are rationalistic and rather rigid, and in my opinion they are. Each project is conceived ideally as the continuation of the lines of research explored by more modern architects of the classical tradition, such as Auguste Perret, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, and Louis Kahn. An extreme reduction of structural elements is present in all his designs. Well, you know, I think neither Perret nor van der Rohe nor Louis Kahn really reduce structural elements to an extreme. I don't think so. The most important values of this text is from Wikipedia. The most important values of his works lie precisely in the intentional timelessness, indifferent to novelty, interested only in respecting an inner coherence, detached, far from the chatter and gossip of the world of architecture of our time. I'm not so sure about this, nor am I sure that it is really timeless architecture. I personally don't think it is. But this was the opinion of the one who wrote this text in Wikipedia. Livio Vacchini designed houses, office buildings, schools, and community facilities in Switzerland and France. His major works are the School of Montagnola near Locarno, his own house in Costa, Switzerland, and the School of Architecture of Nancy. And now we are going to see some of his works. Casa I don't know very well how to pronounce, Soldune, Locarno, Ticino, 1961, 1962. From that time, I have mainly pictures in black and white. It's, you know, it's an architecture which is acceptable, but not highly surprising. I actually like more his earliest works than his later works. And I will try to say why. Administrative building in Fabrizia, 1964, 1965. Here he worked with Luigi Snozzi. The building is located in the center of this place, next to the well-known Piazza del Sole. It is a 6 floors administrative building conceived as a residential courtyard on multiple levels, which receives light through the transparent roof. The ground floor consists of a free space fixed by a boundary wall which contains the flights of stairs leading to the basement and the 4th floor. The central entrance hall is fully glazed. This text is from his own website, and if you are interested to study him further, you can do so on his website. The 4 upper levels consist of large, I'm not sure I did well by extracting these descriptive texts, which I don't quite like to read, but I'll read for a while. A gallery runs around the inner courtyard, the core services and stairs. Anyway, the construction is steel with a view, structures entirely painted in blue. This doesn't quite make sense, this phrase. Hanging curtains protect the glass facades. Internal dividers consist of prefabricated aluminum elements. And this is the building. You know, I should have shown only the building without the text. Yeah, it's a I would say a good building in that in this using this particular architectonic language. But you know, there are so many buildings of this sort in the world that you know, but I still like the architecture of mid 20th century. There is quality there often, although it is an architecture of reason rather than you know, emotion. But much of it is good, and he was influenced by Scandinavia. He was influenced by Arne Jacobsen, a very good and excellent international style architect, Danish architect. Now, low-cost housing from 1964-1965, also in Locarno. I'm not going to read this, sorry. I like this building. It's low cost, meaning, you know, social housing. Here it says at the bottom that the original facade was influenced by the Scandinavian experience of Livio Vacchini, Jacobsen, meaning Arne Jacobsen in particular, wooden frames painted black, full height, upon which were inserted windows and Eternit facing panels. The strong rational design allowed a large number of fixed equipments normally not provided by the standard of social housing. And yes, I actually like this building. I'm not so sure about the base, which is rather misanthropic because it's opaque. Usually buildings at the, you know, the level of the ground open up towards society, towards, but this being in nature, I guess, I don't know. I'm not very sure, but what is above, I think is well done. And there is a certain degree of freedom because of this, you know, playfulness of this white or whitish things that block the, you know, the typical windows. Also, the windows are interesting because they are, you know, vertical and narrow, and it's a building which I think does have qualities. Now, the pavilion, the neuropsychiatric county hospital pavilion from 1967. I almost said, why not? It's good. And in my opinion, again, his early works, those done in the 60s, they seem to me a little better than his later works. But we are going to see some of those later works. Another housing and public center also from the 60s with the same architect, Luigi Stozzi. Yeah, you can find these texts both in Italian and English on his website. Here it is. Again, if you didn't know, if we didn't know this was done by Livio Vacchini, you know, we would have liked it to an extent, but not an alarmingly high extent, because, you know, the building, I mean, there are many good buildings in the world, and this is not particularly, you know, unique. Without being an expert in Livio Vacchini, I would say that he was influenced strongly by certain architects. And I'm going to show some examples a little later on where the influence, not to use a different word, is quite noticeable. Arne Jacobsen was mentioned before, but we'll see something else, almost in bothering ways. He was a good architect, Livio Vacchini. He was a good architect, but I will express some doubts about him a little bit later on. The Vacchini house, I think he was rather well-to-do because he built this house for himself. it's here. What I like about it is that the presence of the plants. I mean, I don't know if that's how he conceived it when he built it, or it became like this. But it's. I have a good feeling about this building, and it's you know, a skeleton, a structure reduced to essentials, and then you know, lots of plants and lots of glass. But this is almost a signature element for him, the large panels of glass, which do not open conventionally. Some of them slide. The building is, you know, still influence here, I would say, of the international style. It's good. I like this building, but you know, with this incredible landscape behind and around, the building almost doesn't matter how it is. No, no, it's not quite like this. Anyway, but this is him here. You see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 panels, all identical. You know, I don't know. It's Lido, 1980-1986, Ascona, Ticino. Now here, I have to confess, I was bothered by the reference, maybe unacknowledged, to a hospital that Louis Khan built in Dhaka, in Bangladesh, and I'm going to see the work. I don't know if we can use harsh words like plagiarizing, but it's just, for me, it's bothering the similarity between what he did and what Khan did with, I don't know, when was this bill, 1980, 1986. So what Khan did was at least, well, around 20 years earlier or so. Anyway, so this is the building. What is it, a Lido? I don't know exactly what it is, but really, to me, it's embarrassing. Or maybe I'm excessive in my criticism, but I hope I'm not. No, actually, I hope I am. I hope I'm wrong, because, and it's not the only example. Well, I'm going to show you something else. So this is what Livio Vacchini did, and we will look now at the hospital of Louis Khan in Dhaka, in Bangladesh. Now, of course, there are differences, but when you look at this, and you look at this, you know, it's hard for me to believe that Livio Vacchini was unaware of the work by Louis Khan. Because even here, this main elevation of the hospital by Louis Khan, and when I look at this, you know, it's, in my opinion, there is a certain resemblance, isn't there? Although the scale is different, the heroics of Louis Khan are absent, but and it's not the only example. I'll show you another building where he became dangerously close to a previous building built by an important Spanish architect. Anyway, Alfredo House, 1984-1986 in Zurich, with another architect, Mario Piatti. I'm not going to read this. This is also bothering, but maybe I should read a little bit. The Alfredo House is a compact square building which does not reveal, well, should be either its function or its internal distribution. The volume abstractness allows the combining of two functional aspects, the working and the living. Now, you tell me, is this a house? I mean, you know, its opacity, its blankness reminds me of atomic building or nuclear building in Israel, built by none other than Philip Johnson. But this also makes me think of some North American buildings, but not for houses, for God's sake, for, corporations or even museums. No one would think that this is a house. Look at this, it's totally, it's shut off from the outside, and is not inviting in any way. It's like a big warehouse, or some, I don't know what is the conception here, but I have a different conception about what a house is. Even if you work in it, where are the windows? Is the courtyard? I hope it is, or I don't know, but it's a very uninviting building. And to call it a house or casa is a little bit, to me, provocative. Casa Vacchini, Costa, another Vacchini, but I don't know if he built it for himself again in 1991. I don't know why I place these texts, because I don't like to read them. It interrupts the fluidity of the discourse. Okay, the discourse might not be very rigorous, but I prefer it to be fluid than interrupted by so much rigor. Let's look at the building again. Is this a house? I'm very sorry, but even for a misanthropic being, this is too much. It's really too much, I mean, it doesn't look like this on all sides, but one of the sides is like this. And it's just, to say that it is uninviting is to be mellow. And there is a door. Now, remember the doors that the non-architect Rudolf Steiner did. Each door was crafted as an event in the architecture of the building, because the threshold between the outside and the inside happened there, and it was eventful. It was designed in a certain way. Look here, there is just a door handle and this canopy. Otherwise, the building is hermetically, saying, don't come in. I don't like this architecture. I'm sorry. I don't know. Maybe I'm limited. Maybe I have problems, which is possible. But I cannot accept a house looking like this. And even on the side, what's so great, really? I mean, this could have been any kind of other building, not a house. And the interior, yes, it's a large space, and maybe Jean Nouvel was right. A nice apartment or a nice house is a large. Well, he talked about apartments. A nice apartment is a large apartment. Yes, there is a plenty of space here, but I don't know. I don't know. Is this a house to live in, or is a house to look at? I find it rather arrogant, actually, in the vicinity of this building or this building. What does it try to say, with its cubistic misanthropy? I like more what I see here, to be honest with you. Yes, and even this building, I like it more. A synagogue, a project was not built. And I have to tell you, and maybe I'm wrong, and I apologize if I was wrong, but when I saw the project, I only have 2 images of this project. I thought, is this a fascist or a Nazi synagogue? I know it's unacceptably oxymoronic, but then very well that Putin accused, he entered Ukraine in order to denazify Ukraine, but the president of Ukraine is Jewish. So since when, Jews are Nazis? Well, since when a synagogue looks like this? Uh, I mean, I see David's star, yes, but on that background, the way the building was conceived, I thought of yes, sorry, Livio Vacchino, I thought of a fascist synagogue, and look at it here too. It's possible Hitler would have loved it. Yes, he hated the Jews, but he might have loved this so-called synagogue. Now, was it a sarcastic project by Livio Vacchini? I don't know. But it's something about this building that bothers me. Anyway, it was not built. Another house from 2001, 2005. We remember he died in 2007. Here he worked with another architect, Marco Azzola. Yes, a spectacular landscape, probably, a rich house. You remember the concrete wall, the concrete architecture of Rudolf Steiner, organic and all the rest. And here is just, rationalism. And I don't know. I mean, he uses these huge pieces of glass, but here they are facing rock, and so close to it. And so towards what are you opening these huge pieces of glass? And of course, he also didn't think at all about the losses of energy, but okay, Switzerland has money, so why not spend on the electrical bills or some other bills? But it's something here that the rhetorics of this excessive transparency not justified. They just a few meters away from this massive obstruction of nature, so to speak. It's something I don't know, I wouldn't do. Here is something else. Yes, of course, you can open this sliding door completely and then jump from it in a suicidal manner and disappear from the world before Putin is shooting at us with his nuclear arsenal. I don't know what to say. It's another house with very comfortable beds, I'm sure, and you stare through this giant glass at the beauty of the outside, but I'm not impressed. And here you stare, I don't know, it's something here that doesn't seem to work, in my opinion. Anyway. And since I am a functionalist, I would never do something like this, where you work at the kitchen counter with your back towards natural light. You might not be able to clean up the dishes very well, since the shadow of your being is thrown on the plates. An administrative and commercial building from 2000 to 2003. This received some awards. You see them at the bottom. I took this information from his website. Now, this building frightens me, I confess. And I used one image, one picture taken from this building in the invitational, material I sent out. To me, this building is almost the paradigmatic, the perfect prison. The grid is for all to see, but look at it, it's actually, it's beyond me why people would love such a thing. It's simplistic. Its system sickens me. It does. Yes, I am an adversary of excessive controlling forces, and that's what I see here. Control. And even inside is, all these squares, on the ceiling, on the walls, this grid, and grid again. Aren't we tired of these grids? Look at here, and look at this. You exit from a prison and you enter into a prison. You expect almost this to be some kind of a diabolical guillotine that falls on you when you try to cross, from the inside towards the outside or vice versa. It's truly an architecture that makes me stay away from. And even this staircase here, yes, it's an interesting picture, but look at the shadow of the prison-like facade. And then this stair, where does it go? Into a bunker, into some kind of a. It's a not a hospitable. It's not friendly, this building, in my opinion, at all. I used to think that Italians, and he was an Italian from Switzerland, are friendly natures, but I see here some unfriendliness, in my opinion. It's not a warm architecture and it's not friendly. That's how I perceive it. Subjectively, I confess, but now the House of Three Women, I actually like the name, its name, but I took this from a different source, not from his website. I don't know if on his website it's also called House of Three Women. The project presented a single building divided into three separate houses, united by a large terrace. The construction measures 60 meters long and 10 meters wide. Each house has two levels. Each housing unit consists of a closed part and an open one, the portico. The surface of each house is 60 square meters. Same for the portico. It's not a big surface, but this, I mean, is probably just the the imprint, the fingerprint on the floor. Well, I'm beginning to forget English. It's not fingerprint, you understand, the trace of the building on the ground. They are living dual height, close towards the lake. The height of each house is 6 meters. On the ground floor are the kitchen and the living room, while upstairs, yes, so it's actually 120 meters because it has two floors. While upstairs, there are the bedroom, bathroom, and office. The elevation of structures, floors, and ceilings are in concrete, plaster, and rear metal and glass for windows. Here they are. It's difficult for me to avoid the word rigid. It's rigid. I'm not against regularity necessarily, but I don't see here so much grace. I see more desire to control through willfulness. And there are strange things. Like, look here, is this heavy wall of concrete, and here is supported apparently by nothing. It's just glass. I mean, there is here the column, but here, I don't know, it's something, unless I don't see because of the reflections, but even if it is some hidden, there is some hidden column here, it's rather disturbing what's going on here. This heavy thing sitting on top of a large piece of glass and nothing else underneath. I imagine there are some reflective, delusions or illusions here, visual incongruencies, because I don't see the bottom of this, heavy piece of wall. It's all in all, to me, it's something problematic here. Maybe some people will think that exactly this makes this architect extremely interesting and enticing. I don't know. I mean, at the beginning of the presentation, we read the names of Perret, Louis Kahn, and Miss van der Rohe. In my opinion, they were far, far superior to Livio. And we are going to see another building where the inspiration is almost literally, applied to his own building. Plus, so much glass, I'm sick of this glass, 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 and glass again. This could have been a museum very well. It's a house for 3 women. And I look even at the landscaping, it's so, all these parallels and all this, it's very, I don't know. I miss Rudolf Steiner with his organic lines. Okay, it's my subjectivity, I agree. This expensive glass, because it is expensive glass, and that there are no windows that open. It's actually very opaque in essence, although there is transparency because it's glass. But in spirit, I think it's very opaque, more opaque than a small little so-called traditional window. Air conditioning, of course, air conditioning. You need air conditioning here. Probably here there are some sliding windows, but the ideology of such large pieces of glass make me disappointed actually, because this is not really artistry. It's just, you have a slab and you have another slab, and then in between them, you put glass. The larger, the better. Another residence from Muralto Ticino. I'm not going to read, plus is in Italian. Now here, I am very sorry for the admirers of Livio Vacchini, but this sort of thing, and you are going to understand it because I'll show an elevation of the front of the building, is very, to say that is disappointing is to say very little. If there is a sign of life here, is this piece of furniture, which he didn't create, I imagine, with the word Brooklyn, and this one here. But the building, the architecture itself is rationalism, dry as it is. But look at this elevation. Here you have this cantilever part. Now this one is not much bigger than this one. He placed these ridiculous columns, which, I think any engineer would question their efficiency for structural purposes. It's almost making fun of statics and making fun of what a column is supposed to be. What is this? Because, okay, Antoni Gaudi, and not only him, used, inclined, columns, but not like this. When this is a rationalist, Livio Vacchini is a rationalist. And when he tries to mimic freedom, he does such ridiculous things. I really find this extremely problematic. If here he didn't need any column, here with a little bit of more armature, he would not have needed it either. And so, I don't know, maybe I'm in a bad mood, but I don't think that's it. From 2010, but let's remember, he died in 2007. So this building was finalized after his death. But it's actually was not finalized. Sorry, he did a similar one, and we are going to see it. This is just a project that was done, and I don't even know why it's shown on his website. I guess his firm, his office continues to work, and they did this work, but he was dead in 2000. He died in 2007. Here in the project, the building, we'll see, he built a building that is not very different from what we see here. Fortunately, we have these people, I almost felt like saying fooling around on bicycles that bring some life into the thing. Otherwise, the building is crushingly almost anti-life. It's just a project, so let's forgive it and forget it for being just a project. Now, a gymnasium from 2005, 2010, I'm not going to read, sorry. You see, he built this, very similar to this in a way, but taller. Here there are some antecedents, some precedents in Japan, and not only in Japan. I think Livio Vacchini loved to look through magazines and find some inspiration. I'm not impressed really by this building either. It's rather aggressive in its monotonous repetition. And the interior, what can we say? Again, huge pieces of glass. That ventilation obviously is done artificially. Now, I show you a building in Japan at Takasaki Music Center by Anthony Raymond. You know, it has something of the building he designed, which is here. You look at this, and you look at Anthony Raymond in Japan, done with 50 years earlier, if not more. And now we see, I don't know what this is. Yeah, this was built between, I think he worked here because in 2005 he was alive. He died in 2007. And here is actually very, amusing and sad at the same time, the resemblance, not just with the building by Louis Kahn, the Yale Art Gallery, but also a building in Spain. I'm very strongly inclined to think that he inspired himself explicitly, although I don't know if he recognized it or if he would have recognized it, but you'll understand quickly. So look at this, and then look at the Sanctuary of Aranzazu from 1950s by Francisco Javier Sáenz de Oiza, an excellent Spanish architect. You know, I mean, maybe it's just a coincidence, but I doubt it. You know, this is what Livio Vacchini did, and this is what De Oiza did 50 years earlier. I let the specialists decide, but it just came to my mind when I saw what he did. And I remember the building by De Oiza because I presented his work as well. And not just him, also Louis Kahn. Unfortunately, in the rush to finalize to an extent the presentation, Louis Kahn has horizontally what both Oiza and Livio Vacchini did vertically. Louis Kahn has at the Yale Art Gallery a ceiling with these pyramids at the top. I saw a picture in the past, but I couldn't find it today, which looked very similar to this, except that was on a horizontal plane. Because here you see Kahn looking from the inside of the building towards the ceiling. But the top, meaning what you see from above, but I couldn't find that picture now, is very, very similar to what you see on the vertical wall of both the Oiza and Livio Vacchini. I usually don't, I'm not interested in such correspondences or similarities, but in this case, they seem to me too striking to actually ignore them. Anyway, so this was what you see here is the Louis Kahn Yale Art Gallery roof, and back to the building by Livio Vacchini. It's a factory, I think, or something. So I don't know. I mean, yes, it could be like this, but apartment house, 2005, 2009. I'm not reading, I'm sorry. Again, another building that we might have passed by without stopping, with huge pieces of glass, um, the demagogy of glass being, crushingly authoritative, or there is no such word. I'm obviously tired and I don't remember basic English words. It's okay in a way, but I prefer the tree on the right, always. And Salva, a nuova sede ambulance, is a place for ambulances. And of course, the word Salva is for all to understand. Now, what's so great about this building? I personally don't see anything great. It's just a prism, a box, and the cars, the ambulances go in. But is this great architecture? And why shouldn't it be? I mean, we saw the boiler room by Rudolf Steiner, which is architecture. Is this architecture? I'm not very convinced. I mean, the most architectural thing about this are these arrows here painted on the concrete surface. Otherwise, it's a garage that is very banal, in my opinion. I even, on the other side, the building is prose. It's not poetry. If there is any poetry here, besides the mentioned, the aforementioned arrows, is the yellowish vehicle here, which happened to be a Mercedes. But I like the color, because otherwise, my God, my God. Yes, but it's a garage in a way, so you could say, why should it be beautiful? But then why shouldn't it? And this is a cemetery. You'll see that a cemetery is not very different from a garage for ambulances in a way. It's still the same author. Although I see here 2013, 2014, so I'm not sure. Did he do the project before he died, or was it done by his collaborators after he died? It's here, what he did. It's I like more what was without an architect. It's here, the house of the dead, but I don't see too much spirituality or sorrow or compassion or melancholia. It's just concrete. And look at the top. What are these things that you open to? It's something, in my opinion, depressing here. Anyway, secondary school, 2004, 2008. I'm not reading the text. This facade is, interesting in a way, in opposition to the mountain behind. But the long elevation, we are going to see the side elevation, is, what would move us as architecture here, really. I almost felt like quoting from Hannah Arendt, the banality of evil, or to put it the other way, the evil of banality. Yes, he's seen from here is maybe not so bad, but still, it's I prefer the mountains and the shadow of this tree here to this building. I mean, this building is throwing a shadow on the earth that is not really adding anything to the beauty of the world. I would say it subtracts from it. I'm nostalgic, to be honest, towards Rudolf Steiner. And I think that's it. So let's wish him happy birthday, and let's hope I was not too subjective.